Thank you, Brandon. I'm going to come out from behind the lectern, otherwise I'll white knuckle it all night. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I'm grateful to share in this experience with each and every one of you today. And as I've gotten to know Nick and have been introduced to this event, the Healing Field, he asked me, just get up there and tell your story. I want to share with you an experience that I had this morning. I was invited to a tribute similar to this at an elementary school out in the West Valley. And as I stood there shoulder to shoulder with my fellow veterans and first responders, and real quick before I go any further, round of applause to our veterans and first responders. As I stood there shoulder to shoulder with these men and women who were on the front lines day in and day out in servitude of our great community, I couldn't help but catch myself staring at this sea of children that are my children's ages. Some younger, some older. And I was captivated by the idea that they have no real connection to the significance of this event in time 23 years ago. And yet, their appreciation, their gratitude, their togetherness was awe-inspiring. And it really drove home this concept of what it is to be a patriot. And it was symbolic of who we are as a people and a country, unified as patriots. And it was really empowering and just a beautiful reminder of what we're capable of. So Nick told me to tell you my story, my patriotic story. And I really feel that it embodies both what that ideal should be and what it actually is. And there are these three themes that come up over and over throughout the story I'm about to tell you. Those themes being keep your promises, do hard things, and make yourself proud. When I was 16 years old, my dad asked me, son, what do you want to do when you grow up? And if I'm being quite honest, I'm still figuring that out. But I told him quite simply, it was really obvious to me. I wanted to play ball in college, I wanted to get my degree, and I wanted to serve my country. And that season would come and go. My junior season would come and go. My senior year, I will never forget. We're getting ready for Thomas Jefferson High School. I'm sitting in Miss Robinson's English class. when one of our principals comes into the room, pulls her aside and whispers in her ear. And a minute or two later, they wheel in this TV on a cart. Some of y'all are too young to remember what that was like. There were no flat screens back then. And the energy just changed. It was nervous, it was somber, it was just weird. She plugs it in, turns it on just in time for the second tower to get hit. And I'd be lying if I sat here and told you I didn't think it was a joke. It was so off-putting that anything like that could happen on American soil. It took a couple of minutes for the reality to set in. This is real. This is happening. And then a little while later, as the towers fall, another America. Another bulletin comes over the intercom. The Pentagon was hit. And I remember thinking to myself, my mom's having a meeting in the Pentagon today. I go down to the office. I'm a senior. My little brother's a freshman. And against all school policy, I go track him down in his classroom, pull him out. We hop in my beat up 91 Sonata and head home, waiting, hoping for good news. Cell phone towers are down. It's gridlock on the Beltway. No word. One of the longest days ever. Around 9 p.m. that night, my mom comes walking through the door. That meeting she was supposed to be in was canceled. And I distinctly remember in the aftermath of that day, the significance, the newfound meaning of these flags that you see behind you, and how we came together as a tribe like never before seen. That season would come and go. And I would end up being recruited by the United States Air Force Academy. And if you remember that promise that I made when I was 16, I want to play ball, get my degree, and serve. Well, the academy is all of that wrapped up with a bow. And if you understand my pedigree, my father, a Vietnam Mustang, enlisted right out of high school, put himself through college, came back from Vietnam, commissioned as an officer in the Air Force, met my mom and rode her career for another 26 years. She retired a full bird colonel. That winter, my brother had just enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, 0311 infantryman. it all made sense. It is as written. This is supposed to happen. I take the scholarship. That following summer after graduation, I get 2 weeks of summer break before checking into the Air Force Academy prep school. And I remember at our in-processing brief, Colonel Ferris, the commanding officer of the P, standing up there as I stand before you right now, and him saying, look to your left and look to your right. One of you is not making it to graduation. And I just told you the ilk that I'm cut from. I look to my left and I look to my right. I said, it sucks to be one of you. I got this in the bag. Make it through prep school, take my appointment to the academy. 18 days of boot camp on the first go, 6 more weeks. Round 2. And I found myself in an experience and on a path that was not my own. And I didn't have the nuts to say, I quit. I ended up getting caught cheating on a 10-point quiz that would change the trajectory of my entire life. 10 points. My teammates who had overcome similar situations, just like, hey, throw yourself upon the mercy of the court, admit to it, do your time, finish your honor probation, and we're back out on the field just in time for game day. And that's exactly what I did. Halfway through my 6-month honor probation, we're in combat survival training. I'm standing on top of a rock. This is a scene out of a movie, triangulating our next point, starving, sweating, tired, and I get a tap on the shoulder by a first-degree senior cadre. Are you Cadet 4-degree Anders? Yes, sir, I am. I need you to come with me. You're being dismissed from the Air Force Academy. And in that moment, I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel anger. I felt disappointment for letting my parents down. And that would lead me on a 7.5 year journey to find myself. And rediscover who Mycal is and what does Mycal really want. Now, I had the good fortune of a coaching staff that believed in me just enough to make a phone call and help me get recruited to Texas A&M at Commerce. And Coach Conley gave me another shot. And 6 games into that next season, after earning the starting spot, I blow out my knee and it ends my season. And that would be a pattern and a trend in this valley of my life. I came back for one more season and got hurt some more, blew out my other knee, both shoulders gone. At which point I just decided I need to graduate and get out of here. I left the season on the table, turned in my pads, and I ended up graduating a whole year ahead of my academy class. But it didn't get any better. I found myself living out of my car for a couple of weeks. When I finally got into an apartment, I had to pawn all of my earthly possessions, what little I had, to make rent. And then later on, to avoid eviction, my brother, who's now on scholarship at the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, sent me his scholarship check so I could keep a roof over my head. All the while, I'm pursuing this new dream, this new passion in fitness as a personal trainer, building my book of clientele and just figuring it out while I survive on the dollar menu at McDonald's. 2 sausage, egg, and cheese McMuffins in the morning, 2 spicy chicken sandwiches in the evening, and that's how it was for months. Until I got on solid ground, started earning a living, only to be invited to a soccer game on a night just like this in Dallas, Texas, SMU playing Central Arkansas. My buddy Evan and I pull up, grab our seats in the stands, and for the first time since leaving the Air Force Academy, because all of our pregame at Commerce was in the locker room, I heard the words, "Please stand for the playing of our national anthem." And out of sheer reflex, as if I still had a uniform on, thumbs on trouser seams, chest big and proud, locked spine. And I realized in that moment, this chapter isn't over. That next morning, I submitted applications for officer candidate school to the Air Force, the Army, and the Marine Corps. And in true Marine Corps fashion, Captain Jesse Pletz was the first one to call me back. I walk into his office. It's the middle of October. And I tell him, "Look, I'm leaving Dallas at Christmas. What's it going to take for me to get in this gun club?" He's like, "Well, I don't have any slots available for you until June. So if you can hang on that long, it's probably going to take you that long to get your package complete anyway. So it lines up." And he sends me out of his office with a checklist. 48 hours later, I return to that recruiting office with a library of documentation and a floppy disk that is my security clearance from the academy. Drop it on his desk and tell him, "Let me know what gaps need to be filled." And the look of disbelief on this man's face. I was like, "Kid, you're going to set the record for getting your package approved out of this office." I was like, "I'm still leaving in December." "Well, you go ahead and do that, but you're just letting you know you're rolling the dice." That's fair, but I got to go. December comes, still no word, package submitted. I head east to Nashville, where my mom and dad are now living. We celebrate Christmas together, and on December 26th, 2007, I get a phone call from Captain Pletz. And he asked me if I've unpacked my stuff. Which I hadn't. He's like, good, because you're checking in on January 18th. We make our way to Shreveport, New Year's Eve, to see Bama play Oklahoma State. Bama wins. We go have a grand old time at the casino, make our way back to the hotel, going over the play-by-play, and everybody falls asleep where they lie. At some point in the middle of the night, I stir in my sleep and I kick my dad's hand. He'd fallen asleep in the armchair. He gets up, all 300 pounds of him, all belly, and he shuffles back to the bedroom. And on the way, I say, I love you, Dad. He says, I love you too, son. And those were the last words I got to say to my old man. He went to bed and never woke up. Just as I was feeling whole with my life path, my best friend and mentor gone, just like that. We buried him in Omaha, Nebraska, a few days later, and I would listen to my mom cry herself to sleep night after night over the next couple of weeks. And it, along the way, had been communicated to me very explicitly. You want the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps doesn't need you. And with that seed planted in the back of my head, I'm sitting with my mom, and I told her, I was like, hey, I got in. It's good enough, right? I can stay. I have a skill. I can set up shop right here. You don't have to go through this alone. And my mom, being the leader and the patriot that she is, looks me dead in my eye and says, if you don't do this, you will regret it for the rest of your life. And I will not be the reason for that regret. You need to go. Two days later, I'm pulling up to the gate at the crossroads of the Marine Corps that is Quantico, Virginia. And I pause. I have the most awkward eye contact with the gate guard. And I have this moment, this stark realization that these entry-level programs only get longer. 18 days, 6 weeks, now it's 10. This better be the last one. And still, unsure of myself, I call a buddy of mine. He's about 6 months ahead of me in the process. And I just asked him, I said, hey, is it worth it? He said, man, I ain't been in it long enough to give you an answer. All I know is that if you don't do it, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. And with that, maintaining that awkward eye contact with that gate guard, I pull up to the gate and hand him my orders. And this grin creeps across his face as if he knows something that I don't. And I check into OCS. 10 weeks later, I commission Second Lieutenant Mycal Anders, United States Marine Corps. 6 months later, I'm graduating the basic school, headed to Pensacola, Florida for air traffic control school. 4 months later, I pull orders to Marine Corps Air Station Yuma. 8 months after that, I have my ratings and I get augmented out to 29 Palms to deploy with VMU-1 and run intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance operations for our troops on the ground in country. That April, we deployed. And for 7 months straight, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, we were the eyes in the sky for our troops on the ground. And regardless of where you fall on this global war on terror, when your boot's on the ground, your only focus is to take care of the 14 Marines and 16 civilian contractors on my crew and come home with those 14 Marines and 16 civilian contractors. And there was a moment where we had a bird go down. And I looked to Staff Sergeant Frakes. And I tell him, if this goes south, you're in charge. Corporal Cummins, come with me. We don our flags, strap on our Kevlars, rack a magazine, fill a round, and we hump it over the berm of our outpost, 15 feet high of moon dust. Every step, you're knee deep in brown powdered sugar to recover this UAV, not knowing what's on the other side. And the angst and adrenaline I will never forget to this day. We recover the bird successfully. And for all of that, all I have to show for it is a chemical burn down my back from the jet fuel leaking from the Scan Eagle. And we came home. And it wasn't until just after New Year's, I'm on the way back to base on that 194-mile trek with the of Mill Ave and Old Town ringing in my ears. Somewhere in the middle of the desert, down I-8, pounding a disgusting cocktail of Pedialyte and Red Bull, trying to survive the weekend that we just had up here. That I was alone with my thoughts long enough to realize how proud I am of this promise that I kept from when I was 16 years old, and all the hard things that needed to be done on the way to being accepted and dismissed from the Air Force Academy. All the pain of injury after injury after injury, finishing my degree at East Texas State. That moment of homelessness and hopelessness, facing eviction, building a client base, only to burn it all down and try one more time. To close this chapter the right way. And I think back to those kids this morning. And how their patriotism will only be nurtured and grow from the example that we set for them. In the promises that we keep, the hard things that we do, and the pride that comes with it. Because just like my patriotic story, there's the ideal and there's what it really is. It's not a straight line. Sometimes it's messy. But if you do those three things, on the other side lies nothing but greatness. Never forget.